Hey there, it's Steve from Serious Keto, and this is part 4 of my weight loss transformation story. This is the part where we actually start getting into the physical transformation and the things that I did. Now, in the earlier videos, I made sure to disclaim the fact that I am not a healthcare professional. Nothing I say in this or any of my other videos should be construed as healthcare advice. In fact, it's just me talking about me and the results that I experienced and what I witnessed. You need to make your own decisions on what's right for you. I also think that of all of my videos, this is going to be the one that probably has the most lively debate in the comment section. I think there's a lot of things that perhaps I did and that Penn did might push some buttons for some people. And what I would ask is, just like with the other videos, that you please be civil in your discussions. It's entirely okay for people to disagree and have a discussion. But if we start getting into some name calling and personal attacks, that's just not all that cool. Final quick bit of business we need to get out of the way before I start talking about the physical transformation is the actual book, Presto. I will include a link to this book down in the description below. But first, I want to help you understand if this book is the right book for you. Penn Gillette is an atheist, and he makes sure that he lets you know that a lot in this book. If something like that bothers you, probably not the right book for you. Additionally, if this were made into a movie, it would probably be rated NC-17 for language. So if you find a lot of salty language to be off-putting, probably not the book for you. Penn is also a very opinionated man. He is a libertarian, so if you find yourself politically off to the left, the further off to the left or further off to the right that you are, the more likely he's going to say something that pushes some of your buttons. Probably one of the best ways to tell if you might enjoy this book or not is if you have Amazon Prime. Get out onto Prime Video and watch a couple episodes of Penn and Teller's show, BS. And if you find that you like Penn and his monologues and his opinions on matters, then this might be a good book for you. Penn talks an awful lot about the standard American diet. It's a very interesting story told from a very personal standpoint. As someone who, Penn, had some rather severe health issues, he had gone to his doctor, and his doctor said that if he didn't make a radical, almost miraculous change in his lifestyle and his body weight in the next 90 days, he was going to need to have gastric sleeve surgery. So Penn tells his story, and it's in a journal type of format, which is good because you're kind of going along with the ride for him. It's also a little bit bad because at times he can be redundant. He'll tell the same story multiple times. That's all I have to say about Presto as a book. Now let's talk about Presto and its impact on me and my diet. Penn Gillette followed this sort of roadmap for 90 days. I followed it for 8 weeks because I had less weight to lose. Also, based on my history with dieting, I wasn't sure how long I could maintain this, but I knew I could probably draw a line in the sand and say 8 weeks, which would have been just before my birthday, I can do this. The first 2 weeks of the Presto diet are the most radical. Here's what you get to eat. Potatoes. Plain potatoes. Not salted, not buttered, not sour creamed, none of that good stuff. No ketchup. You can have them baked, you can have them microwaved, you can have them steamed, you can have them boiled. You eat the entire potato, skin included. You can have russet potatoes, Yukon Gold potatoes, red potatoes, fingerlings, sweet potatoes, so long as you eat them skin and all and no seasoning at all. In the book, Penn describes this as his potato famine, and to describe it as an unpleasant 2 weeks would be an understatement. My first day of eating just potatoes, I was 213 pounds. And as I ate my first baked potato, without any sort of seasoning, no butter, no salt, no pepper, no nothing, just straight up potato, I thought, so this is what a potato tastes like. didn't love it. I had actually thought that I liked potatoes, but I'd never had a straight up potato. I've always had fries or au gratin potatoes or hash browns or a baked potato loaded with sour cream and bacon and cheese and all that good stuff. Plain potatoes, if you like them, you are a hearty individual indeed. Me, not so much. Didn't care for them. If you've got sort of fantasies about what life would be like eating in a prison camp, this is a good 2 weeks for you. You might actually enjoy this. Around day 3 or 4, I started feeling really crummy. It's not unlike the keto flu and the symptoms you get there, feeling really sluggish and just sort of sick and achy and tired. But Penn said that was going to happen, so I made sure to plan the start of my potato fast such that the crappiness that I was going to feel would fall on a weekend and wouldn't impact me as much. Also, around that time, a few days in, some things started happening. First off, because I was eating food that I didn't enjoy, I was eating purely to get rid of the feel of hunger. I wasn't eating for pleasure. I wasn't eating for emotion. I prepared to be ready for boredom eating and things like that. I had baked a bunch of fingerling potatoes and kept them in the fridge in case I got hungry. But that just didn't seem like a real interesting or enticing snack to me. So they wound up staying in the fridge until it was dinner time, and then I would eat them. But because I was only eating to get rid of hunger, once I quit being hungry, I quit eating. So this is the first time I can remember pushing food away before being full or before the plate being emptied. And this was sort of an interesting and eye-opening thing for me. I realized, wait a second, I can stop eating when I'm satisfied. I don't need to eat to a point where I feel full. And if I get hungry again, I'll eat some more potatoes. But right now, I'm done. So food, 2 weeks, just potatoes. In terms of beverages, all the water you want, great. Green tea, great. Black coffee, great. No cream, no sweeteners, not even any artificial sweeteners. So if what I just described sounds like a pretty miserable 2 weeks, then I described it well. It's not a lot of fun at all. Besides noticing that I didn't like potatoes all that much, which turned out to be sort of a blessing because then it became something I didn't crave later when I moved into a low-carb diet. I also learned that it was okay to stop eating when you're not hungry anymore. I also learned the difference between hunger and appetite. If you want to eat a cookie, you probably have an appetite. If you want to eat a cheeseburger, you probably have an appetite. If you want to eat a plain baked potato, it's because you're hungry. And understanding the difference between hunger and appetite wound up being a very helpful thing as I started to move into intermittent fasting, which we'll talk about a little bit later. In terms of weight loss, I started on day 1 at 213 pounds. 1 week later, I was down to 200 pounds, so 13 pounds in 1 week. That's pretty radical. And it made continuing on with the second week a lot easier. If I would have moved 2-3 pounds, which normally on a diet is a pretty decent number, I probably would have said still, this potato thing, not worth it. But 13 pounds? Yeah, I'm gonna stick with this for another week. And after the second week, I was down to 193 pounds. So 20 pounds in 2 weeks. That is dramatic. And you feel it. You absolutely feel it in your body. You feel it in your knees. And it gets you really excited about continuing on. But another interesting thing I noticed right about the end of the second week, and I'm going to give you like the little TMI warning right now. We're going to go a little TMI. So if you just want to plug your ears, if you're concerned about hearing about like diarrhea, just plug your ears, and when I'm done talking about it, I'll do like this, and then you can listen again. I have had gut biome issues for at least the last 10 years. My stomach gets bothered by a lot of food, especially spicy food, and I love spicy food. I like getting into some habaneros and ghost peppers from time to time, but from about here on down, I know where that spicy food is in my body the whole time. And it is very, very painful to me when it starts getting down into the gut biome. Also, I was on a trip to India a few years ago when I was working for GE, and they give you a single pill antibiotic, and I don't recall the name of it. If someone knows the name of it, remind me, tell me down in the comments. But it is the nuclear option of antibiotics. This thing is absolutely indiscriminate. It wipes out all of the good bacteria as well as all the bad bacteria. But it's the sort of thing that you take when you know that you're going to be on a plane for the next 23 hours. And I took it, and it took care of the immediate issue. But from that point on, big TMI warning, I don't know that I took a bowel movement that wasn't awful for a long time. In fact, I don't know that I was digesting much of anything because I saw stuff in the toilet that looked to be in the same condition as it was after I got done chewing or swallowing. I saw entire vitamins. I know. Ew. Okay, TMI warning over. But at the end of this 2-week period, I started taking some, I guess maybe not TMI warning over, some bowel movements that I felt like my country had just been liberated. I'm like, wow, I forgot what one of these could feel like. So I got out and I started doing a little bit of research. How could this, did I give my gut enough of a break over this course of 2 weeks that things started healing? And certainly I think some of that is the case, that I gave my gut biome a break, a chance to heal on its own. But also I started reading about resistant starches. And I'm not going to go into a whole lot of detail because I don't fully know what I think about all of this. But apparently when certain starches, potatoes among them, are baked and then cooled, they create this type 3 resistant starch. If you believe the pro-resistant starch arguments, this is supposed to have an incredible healing effect on your gut biome, that it really feeds the beneficial bacteria down in your gut. I've seen articles as well that argue that it improves insulin sensitivity and that it's fine to eat that on keto. I don't know what I believe, but I do know that something changed down in my gut biome after 2 weeks. That's as much of a stake in the ground as I'm going to put on that topic. The next 2 weeks, or phase 2, which I called salad days, was the period where I allowed myself to start adding raw vegetables into my diet. And after 2 weeks of just potatoes, your taste buds are ready to party. I ate a celery stick after 2 weeks of nothing but potatoes, and I couldn't believe how much flavor it had. I thought, wow, this is almost like a Bloody Mary. I mean, it's salty, it tastes amazing. I also at this point allowed myself to start putting a little salt and pepper or nutritional yeast on my potatoes. And again, I was amazed at just how much these simple ingredients brought flavor out of something that otherwise didn't taste all that great. Now, still after that first 2 weeks, wasn't a huge potato fan, so I dialed those back pretty dramatically in favor of just these monster garden salads. So I would just mix together a big bag of mixed greens and some spinach and carrots and celery and broccoli and asparagus and cauliflower and onions and peppers and tomatoes and cucumbers, just sort of whatever I could get my hands on that was a vegetable. And the more colorful or deeply colorful it was, the better. I would throw it in, hit it with some olive oil, a little bit of vinegar, either red wine or balsamic or apple wine vinegar. And if I wanted a little bit of a cheesy type of a flavor, I would sprinkle on some nutritional yeast. In terms of beverages, what you can drink during this second 2 weeks, same thing. It's water, coffee, tea. You can now add lemon juice or some stevia. So I would put a couple drops of cinnamon flavored stevia in my coffee, kind of give it that a little bit of a Mexican chocolate type of a flavor, and I was drinking a lot of ice water with lemon juice in it. What this phase did for me is, I believe it continued to allow my gut biome to heal. Also, I have never been much of a vegetable person. That's just not been my thing. And this trained me to appreciate vegetables, especially cruciferous vegetables like broccoli and asparagus, and some of the darker salad greens, which I used to be pretty much romaine, was about as dark green as I went. So I was learning to like vegetables that were better for me. At the end of phase 2, I was at 188 pounds. So I had dropped 5 pounds over the course of 2 weeks, so 2.5 pounds a week. And that's still a respectable weight loss. Of course, it wasn't as dramatic or as exciting as the first 2 weeks, but my progress was still moving. And I was tracking my progress on a spreadsheet parallel, can I do this with 2 hands? Parallel to Penn. And I found that my weight, almost on a day-to-day basis, was tracking similar to his. In the third phase, you're able to start adding some sweeter things into the mix. Penn was really big into a mixture of berries. He would have blueberries, blackberries, raspberries, and some strawberries. And it was nice being able to add some sweets into the mix. It wasn't something I ate every day because I don't have a huge sweet tooth, but it added some additional variety. I would sometimes put some raspberries or something onto my salad as well. I also allowed myself to start drinking nut milks at this point. So I would make, this was one of my favorites, I would take almond milk and I would add a squirt of vanilla stevia drops and a squirt of cinnamon stevia drops. And it's actually a decent little facsimile of horchata, if you've ever had that Mexican drink. As I was approaching the end of phase 3, so we're almost 6 weeks into this, I started trying to figure out, is this something I can do long term? Am I gonna go vegan or vegetarian or something like that? And it didn't feel like that was the path for me. So at this point, I started kind of getting into some research on things like Whole30 and paleo and keto and the Mediterranean diet and some other low carb options. At the end of 6 weeks, I was down to 183 pounds, so I had lost another 2.5 pounds per week doing the Presto approach. Phase 4, the last 2 weeks. This is pretty much straight up vegan for 2 weeks. I'm now cooking my vegetables or steaming them, baking them, roasting them, and I'm also allowing myself to have beans and rice and legumes and nuts. But really, aside from that, there's nothing extra remarkable about those last 2 weeks, except for the fact that it sort of becomes decision time. Is this something I can sustain? Or do I need to truly look at some other diets? Now, the cool thing about this entire Presto approach, though, is that it can go a number of different ways. After you've gone through the experience of recalibrating your taste buds and learning the difference between hunger and appetite, a person can make a decision to either stay vegan or choose a low-carb option, or maybe some variety of vegetarian, pescatarian, something. I'm glad that I went through the Presto process. Penn might not be glad that I went through it since I came out the other side on keto rather as a vegan, but the lessons that I learned in this book helped guide me on the right dietary lifestyle. So during this period, I got out and I was watching a lot of YouTube videos. I was reading a number of different books, and somehow I stumbled upon Keto Connect and spent the better part of this final 2 weeks of the Presto diet binge watching every episode, every video they had ever recorded. And as I saw the food that they were making, I thought, I think this is it. I think this keto thing could be the diet for me, or the lifestyle for me. So if I ever say that Matt and Mega were largely responsible for me going keto, that is not an exaggeration. Had I not stumbled onto their channel and watched their videos and saw how much fun they had cooking keto, because cooking is a passion of mine, I thought this keto thing might be the right thing for me. And I ended my 8-week period at 177 pounds, 2 days before my 51st birthday. So a couple of questions that you may have about the Presto diet. First is, what about protein? Honestly, you don't need all that much protein. I think we're starting to realize that more and more. Even within keto, you look at your macro breakdown, protein does not make up the lion's share of your diet. And even if you are someone that believes you need a ton of protein, this is a relatively short period of time. You'll be fine without a ton of protein. The next question, probably you're wondering, is what about exercise? Did you do any exercise? No. I did 0 exercise during this whole period. If it hadn't been in the middle of winter, I would have gone out and gone for walks. I really enjoy that as a form of exercise. But honestly, I don't think I was taking in enough in the way of calories to really support any sort of vigorous exercise. I know that when I try and exercise when I'm fasting, that it doesn't work out all that well. The next question might be, what about muscle loss? Yeah, there was probably some. Certainly a lot more fat loss than muscle loss. And my attitude in all of this is I gotta kind of strip off some of this fat to even see where the muscle's going in the first place. So I was okay with some muscle loss, and it will give me something to work towards here as we go on into the new year. Another question you may have is, what about alcohol? Can I drink alcohol while I do this? And the answer to that is no. For most of the last 20 years, what dictated whether or not I was going to try out a given diet was, can I have alcohol while I'm on it? Which would pretty much explain why I've been overweight or obese the last 20 years, or at least it's been one of the factors. And I hit a point before I started going through this transformation where I had to do an honest assessment. What's more important to me? Being able to drink alcohol, especially beer, or getting healthy? And for the first time in my life, I was able to answer that question, I want to be healthy. Now, I drink alcohol now, but in very, very small quantities. I just can't handle a whole lot anymore with this weight loss and after not drinking for a fairly extended period of time. The final question you may have is, so hang on, how did this really lead you to keto, aside from the fact that you spent 2 weeks watching some Keto Connect videos on YouTube? There were a few things that I noticed as I started studying keto that Penn was doing. First off, all of the vegetables he was eating were very high fiber, low net carb vegetables. The berries he was eating, same thing. He was consuming a lot of apple cider vinegar too. He talks about how much he loves apple cider vinegar, and we hear about that a lot in the keto community. He also talked about his eating schedule, the fact that he would eat a little snack before a show, which is at 8 p.m. every night in Las Vegas, and then his big salad or vegetarian vegetable stew, whatever it was, after the show. So he was kind of doing pretty close to 1 meal a day plus a snack. He was certainly doing intermittent fasting. And he talked about how at one point he realized from his breath that he was going into a state of ketosis. He was doing vegan keto, whether he'd like to admit to it or not. And I had the same thing happen while going through his diet. I'm not sure when exactly it was, probably when I started dialing back on the potatoes. But when I go out of ketosis, and I've been out of ketosis 3 times since I officially started keto, each one of those times was by choice, as I'm going back into keto, I get this smell, not from my breath, but it's kind of like I can smell my own snot. That's the only way I can describe it. It's not that acetone keto breath thing, but every time I've come back into keto after being out of keto, I get that smell. And I go and I do a blood ketone test, and yep, I'm back in keto. So I realized that I had probably already been doing keto. All I needed to do was add back in animal product, and I'm there, and I'm happy. In the next episode, I'm going to talk about my transition to keto. And I'm not a keto expert. There are a lot better channels for that. But what I will share with you is some of my experiences in terms of how best to stay keto. What are some of the strategies that worked for me, including why I'm occasionally a little bit dirty keto. And also how to handle conversations with people when you're keto. So hopefully you come back for that video. And as for this one, thanks for watching.